Hi, I'm the Reverend R.Weaver from the First Church and Parish in Dedham, and this is our tiny desk worship. Welcome. We will begin with our centering thought. It's from Mini Omina. When the world wearies and ceases to satisfy, there is always the garden. And I will play our bell. So bring us into this space. And we begin with Vivo by Giuseppe Concone, played by Derry Dolezal. We will not begin church again until at least our homecoming Sunday on September 13th. We will be following what is best practices. I will continue to hold virtual services throughout the summer, and this is our Zoom annual meeting following this service. We will have a few minutes probably of social hour, depending on how long this service lasts. And then at 11 o'clock, we will begin Zoom annual meeting. Our annual report can be looked at on our password protected part of our website. And if you need that, please email me or text me, RollieWeaver@dedhamuu.org, if you need that password. And we will, I hope you will look at the dedhamuu.org website for all details about future events, as well as our all-church email, which will go out throughout the summer. I've also set up several other Zoom opportunities, including our daily meditation from 9 to 9:30. It's just a chance to breathe together with other people. And I will be starting a Dismantling White Supremacy book group. The first book will be White Rage, The Unspoken Truth About Our Racial Divide by Carol Anderson. It's available through Amazon and on Audible and by ebook through your public library. I will post several questions I want you to consider to explore while you read this book on our webpage and in our all-church emails starting next week, and we will have a Zoom discussion about it on July 1st. All of these and more events can be found on our webpage. We will now begin our morning worship with There Is Love by Elizabeth Norton, sang by our First Church Choir. Our opening words are also by Mini Omina. I believe in all things beautiful, the beauty of simple things. I believe in music, where melody is quickly found and poems that sound like songs. I believe in books that hold no ugly thought, in pictures that rest the eye and south the senses, and in plays that keep the heart young. I believe in joy and quick laughter, in sentiment, in love, in reverence. I believe in all things beautiful, for in beauty there is God. I want to light our chalice this morning for the most strange church year I've experienced, probably not stranger than our ancestors experienced during the COVID virus or the Revolutionary War or anything, but still. And I want to light our chalice for all those people who are in nursing homes and not able to be visited by family, and who are who've had to experience the death of a loved one who they didn't get to visit during their last days. I'd also like to light our green sanctuary candle for all the ways we try to be a more sustainable congregation, including the ways that we stay connected virtually when we can't be together personally. I invite you to sing with me our opening hymn, O Ye Who Taste That Love Is Sweet. Now please say with me the unison affirmation as is printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to serve humanity in love is our covenant with each other and with God. And now I will bring us to our centering time so we can share our story with our children. Our story today is Little Seeds by Charles Ginga and shared by Jenny Carlson-Petrazik.
Little Seeds by Charles Ginga, illustrated by Ag Jackowski. Goodbye, winter. Hello, spring. Here's my seed. What will it bring? Here's my shovel. Here's my hoe. They will help my seed to grow. Here's the garden for my seed. This small hole is all I need. Now some water. Now some sun. Planting seeds is so much fun. Watch it flower. Watch it bloom. Watch it brighten up my room. Hello, flower. Hello, bee. Thanks for sharing spring with me.
I invite you into a spirit of meditation, as is your practice. Let us be grateful for all the silences in our lives, for with them we may more completely experience the sound. Our first reading is read by Becca Vautour, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgkin Burnett.
An excerpt from The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgkin Burnett. "If the goes round that way, they'll come to the gardens," she said, pointing to a gate in the wall of the shrubbery. "There's lots of flowers in summertime, but there's nothing bloomin' now." She seemed to hesitate a second before she added, "One of the gardens is locked up. No one has been in it for 10 years. "Why?" asked Mary, in spite of herself. Here was another locked door added to the 100 in the strange house. "Mr. Craven had it shut up when his wife died so sudden. He won't let no one go inside. It was her garden." He locked the door and dug a hole and buried the key. "There's Mrs. Medlock's bell ringing. I must run." After she was gone, Mary turned down the walk which led to the door in the shrubbery. She could not help thinking about the garden that no one had been in for 10 years. She wondered what it would look like and whether there were any flowers alive in it. When she had passed through the shrubbery gate, she found herself in great gardens with wide lawns and winding walks with clipped borders. There were trees and flower beds and evergreens clipped into strange shapes, and a large pool with an old gray fountain in the midst. But the flower beds were bare and wintry, and the fountain was not playing. This was not the garden which was shut up. How could a garden be shut up? You could always walk into a garden.
And now our anthem, Keepers of the Earth by Joyce Poley. reading will be read by Jenny Carlson-Petrazik, Coming to Our Senses by Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Coming to Our Senses by Jon Kabat-Zinn. There have always been individuals and groups that have been committed to more humane and benevolent ways of defining and realizing the highest means and the most meaningful ends in various human enterprises, to say nothing of the innate possibilities of being surprised by unpredictable outcomes when the process itself, as in true dialogue, has integrity and one trusts in it without trying to force particular outcomes. What is now generally called social entrepreneurship, such as the development of the vehicle of microcredit, through which progressive banks can make millions of successful small loans to poor people in places like Bangladesh and elsewhere to start small businesses and lift their standard of living, is one notable example of this kind of imaginative aikido on the world. In this case, in proactively confronting the forces behind the extreme poverty and lack of opportunity of finding ways to enter and blend, to stand at the heretofore unperceived fulcrum of a dilemma and let things rotate around the newly introduced element to good effect. What is changing now is the growing recognition, already widespread, that the inner and outer landscapes of mind and world interpenetrate, and that one has to come to know and tend as a gardener tends a garden, at the institutional level as well as in our individual lives, one's own motivation and thoughts and feelings and the economic and social factors that influence them in order for even the best of intentions to be effectively realized.
I invite you to join with me in singing hymn number 64, "Oh, Give Us Pleasure in Our Flowers Today." It is sometimes hard to find true peace when faced with this world of turmoil. Where do we place our attention? Perhaps this is my burden, being diagnosed as ADHD at 11. I still, at nearly 5 times that age, waffle my attention between news and to-dos and meditations and food preparations and dog walks, with a desire of completing so much in this time of quarantine and feeling as if I'm completing nothing at all. meditating every day has lent itself a bit more consciousness of how I spend my time. When I feel distracted, I remind myself to breathe or take a break. I have been making more lists and crossing things off. Even with my distractibility and the zeitgeist of inequality in our modern world, I am able to regain a sense of equilibrium if I remember to breathe in and breathe out. You might wonder how meditation fits with any of our readings today, or how consciousness or Zen practice alleviate the stressors of our snollygoster of a president, or help decrease police corruption or the climate catastrophe, or even have anything at all to do with our flower communion. I will start with the easiest one, flower communion. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this UU practice, the flower communion service was started by the Reverend Norbert Capek, who founded the Unitarian Church of Czechoslovakia. He introduced this special service to that church on June 4th, 1923. For some time, he had felt the need for some symbolic ritual that would bind people more closely together. The format had to be one that would not alienate any of those who had forsaken other religious traditions. The traditional Christian communion service with bread and wine was unacceptable to the members of his congregation because of their strong reaction against the Catholic faith. So he turned to the native beauty of the countryside for elements of a communion which would be genuine to them. This simple service was intended to celebrate the diversity and beauty of the human spirit in the face of rising discord in Germany and the surrounding nations. Flower communion was such a success that it was held yearly just before the summer recess of the church. In 1949, while on a visit to the United States, the Reverend Dr. Capek's wife, Dr. Maya Capek, brought the tradition of flower communion from Prague to the First Parish in Cambridge. It was during her visit that World War II broke out, and she was unable to return to her husband, who she learned had died in a concentration camp as a result of his Unitarian beliefs. The flower communion remains today a beautiful example of neocentric and progressive resistance in the face of fascism, or in other words, how to plant new and modern seeds of diversity and justice and defiance in the face of a shrewd, immoral regime. This brings me to the question I want us to try to answer today on this final Sunday of our regular church year. How do we plant seeds for the future that will grow into gardens of human love? This is our question because the flowers we celebrate on this last Sunday have always been about celebrating the beauty in the diversity of the human spirit that lives and moves within the entire human race. On a day when we use flowers as metaphors for the diversity of the human race, it might follow that, at least to my crooked brain, that our gardens too could be metaphors for the arenas in which growth and change can occur. For example, growth in any garden requires 4 S's: soil, seeds, sunshine, and sustenance, or water. The growth we seek calls for and needs similar elements. Soil might represent preparing the ground. We do this through reading and education, listening, and deeper understanding. In some ways, I feel that we as a church have been preparing the soil of our consciousness to make sense of the conflicts that have arisen during these troubled times for a while. We have done this through our community reading of books such as Waking Up White by Debbie Irving and The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, We began to open our minds and hearts for deeper understanding of another point of view when we read a book from another perspective or tried to educate ourselves on an emerging problem. We also prepare the soil for our future work through events such as the ones the Women's Alliance has sponsored the last few years. Last fall's True Story Theater Dismantling Bias Active Bystander Workshop and the Justice Film Series that I host each February, which we offer up some common understanding and common language with which we can approach the problems in our world. Finding common language and common understanding are ways of preparing the soil of our community for growth. While we will never be able to be experts on what it is like to be in any other body, or to understand absolutely everything about climate change, what we can do is prepare the ground for our participation for change by opening our minds and hearts more widely through learning and listening. I am grateful to all of you who've engaged in preparing the ground for change this year. The second S in planting in our garden is for seeds. We plant seeds of justice when we share what we learn with others or stand up and proclaim our beliefs. Even rituals like our flower communion that we generally celebrate on this day can serve as a seed of peace in a world of turmoil by reminding us to embrace and celebrate the diversity we wish to see in the world in the same way we embrace the diversity of flowers. Last Sunday, a group of Black ministers drove through the streets of Boston in a funeral parade from 2 to 3 in the afternoon to acknowledge the tragic death and the memorial of George Floyd. They asked white-skinned colleagues, like me, to stand as allies on the side of the road. I invited anyone interested to join me, and a very small contingent of us held up signs on the green near the road. The signs read, BLM for Black Lives Matter and Stop White Silence, and they listed the names of black-skinned people who had been killed by police since the COVID quarantine. Even the Lutz children had signs with their own slogans, Stop Racism, We Will Not Be Silent, and even little Sam held a sign that said, I love everybody and so should you. Many people honked as they passed, showing equal solidarity for the causes that were in our hearts. I believe peaceful vigils and protests are seeds that have the potential to implant ideas in others' heads and provoke community members to start educating themselves. Such actions also offer seeds of support to those who already understand the problem. Furthermore, living our values can plant seeds in our community that makes it clear what we, you stand for. Standing up for what we believe can plant seeds in individual minds so like-minded people can find our church. We also plant seeds when we call elected officials to encourage them to consider voting a certain way or support a candidate for office that reflects our beliefs. We plant seeds when we run for elected office or serve in the church's governance or participate in the democracy in any way. Sunshine is the next element. No garden can do without it. No matter what we put in our garden, we have to consider how much sunshine it needs. Sunshine in the metaphorical sense of change could represent the way some of our efforts work and others do not. We win some, we lose some. We recognize that this snollygoster of a president's racist attitudes and attempts to defund the U.S. Postal Service, dismantle LGBTQ healthcare, and repeal abortion rights are but a few series of cloudy days in a long, growing season of change. We can practice more detachment to the outcomes and of change that are neither predictable nor steady. Paying attention to the light available for progress or progressive ideas to take root helps us to see where to plant for real change and where to be more realistic about where things might take more time to grow. For example, we might all agree that police departments need change now, but to defund them completely without any infrastructure to support unemployed police officers or to set up the systems needed to take their place might create a bigger problem than we have now. Some sociologists suggest that part of the backlash we are seeing in terms of racism and homophobia is because the tide of change toward universal acceptance was too fast for more conservative-minded people. A few years ago, when Dedham was engaged in considering a human rights commission, and I was fairly new to town, I thought it would be an easy thing to convince people of. Several people who had been in Dedham since the 1970s, when the first Human Rights Commission was proposed, were not so sure. We were a group of progressive thinkers suggesting a change that some of the more conservative residents weren't sure about. Writing letters to the editor and thinking through various perspectives was a very important part of the discernment necessary to get the HRC passed. This is the same kind of discernment that is necessary when planting a garden. Where will the plants and ideas get enough sunshine, and where should we plant shade plants or give them some sort of more nourishment to survive and thrive? The final element in every garden needs is water or sustenance. In our metaphorical garden of change, we need water and many other kinds of nourishment to keep going through all the ups and downs and ins and outs of change. In this time of COVID, for example, I have become increasingly drawn to Zen Practice, which focuses on doing but not doing. In meditation, this means in part sitting upright and centering into nothingness. This gets translated into practice through walking meditation, and then doing practice where every step is intentional and with great consciousness of being. Traditional Zen gardens have certain elements and form. However, Zen gardening can take place any time that you center yourself and do the task of tilling and planting and nurturing without focusing too much on the future or the past. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "Like the lotus, we too have the ability to rise from the mud and bloom out of the dirt and radiate beauty into the world." When we can take whatever is offered as nourishment and thank it and use sustenance to grow it, and then we can move more steadily and effortlessly through all the ups and the downs and the backs and the forths of change. I have not mastered Zen thinking in any way, but there are times when I feel anxious and worried. And whatever I am doing, even sermon writing, but with deep breaths and better posture, I can approach whatever I'm doing with more tenuity, and this sets me free. Whatever nourishes your soul, be it prayer or exercise, gardening or meditation, reading or hiking, knitting or dancing, whatever it is, find a way to do it every day with a little more detachment. Because no matter what state the garden of the world is in, if we cannot take care of ourselves, we will not be able to plant seeds for the future. And the future needs our seeds. Just as we are grateful for the flowers that bloom about our feet and those who planted them and tended them and pollinated them and nourished them into fullness, so too is our time for planting. It is our time to plant seeds of human rights. It is our time to plant seeds of justice for lives that were lost too soon. It is our time to stand up for those in need, for the health of our planet, so that our children can enjoy the flowers about their feet in their time to come. I hope you'll sing with me hymn number 76, For the Flowers That Bloom About Your Feet. Now let us fix our steps so we can stagger not in the uneven motions of this world, but go steadily on our way, neither centering our journeys by the weather we meet or turning aside from anything that might befall us. Amen. I hope to see you at Zoom coffee hour.